Audible. Wow, bro. Oh my god. Crazy yoga. Y le ponen la estrella. Wow. Jesus.
Suggesting, who are you? Yes, I mean you who are watching this video. Before you answer, let me tell you an old Buddhist story about the nature of what you call I. One day, the monk Nagasena visited Milinda, king of Sagala, for a conversation. As common courtesy requires, King Milinda asked the monk to introduce himself. The monk answered, "My parents have named me Nagasena, O king, and that's how my fellow monks call me. But this name is only a conventional term. There is really no person, no self it points to." Now, the king was a worldly, educated man. He was immediately annoyed by this unnecessarily mystical answer. So, he decided to strike back. His follow-up question was so brilliant, I'll quote it directly. The king said, "If, most Reverend Nagasena, there are no real persons, pray, who gives to you members of the order your robes and food and lodging and necessaries for the sick? Who is it who enjoys such things when given? Who is it who lives a life of righteousness? Who is it who devotes himself to meditation? Who is it who attains the goal of nirvana? And who is it who kills living creatures? Who is it who takes what is not his own? Who is it who lives an evil life of worldly desires? Who speaks lies? Who drinks a strong drink? If, most Reverend Nagasena, we are to think that we were meant to kill you, there will be no murder, then it follows that there are no real masters or teachers in your order, and that your ordinations are meaningless." King Milinda was not pulling any punches. Not only did he attack the no-self teaching, but he was also suggesting the whole Buddhist project is hypocritical. And he was voicing a widespread criticism that the Buddhist worldview is nihilistic and ultimately self-contradictory. To his credit, Nagasena was not fazed by the king's question. Rather calmly, he offered to answer by using an everyday example. Now, remember, during ancient times, the rich didn't drive around in Maseratis, but they were no less fond of their chariots. So, Nagasena decided to inquire about the king's chariot, knowing it was probably a favorite subject. He asked, "Is it the pole that is your chariot, your highness, or is the axle the chariot?" "Neither," the king said. "Is it the wheels, or the framework, or the ropes, or the yoke, or the spokes of the wheels, or the gold? Are any of these your chariot?" Again, Milinda answered in the negative. "But if we take all these separate parts and pile them up, would this be the chariot?" Nagasena asked. "No," the king said. "But is there anything outside of these parts that is your chariot?" "Of course not," said Milinda. "What is your point?" "Well," Nagasena said, "it appears the chariot is nowhere to be found. Are we to conclude King Milinda lies about owning a chariot?" At this point, I imagine the king's entourage were scandalized. A mere monk had the gall to suggest the king lies about his property, and to his face. But King Milinda, being a cultivated man, was not offended, but actually entertained. Calmly, he answered, "I have spoken no lie, Reverend Nagasena. It is on account of its having these things: pole, axle, wheels, framework, ropes, yokes, spokes, and gold, that we use the conventional term chariot." Now Nagasena had the king right where he wanted him. The monk said, "Excellent, your highness. Truly, you're a wise king. And now you can see how, in the same way, a self is only a conventional term on account of the many body parts of feelings, perception, mental activity and consciousness, on account of all these coming together in specific ways that we say there is a self. But really, there is no independent, persisting self outside of these components or inside any of them. Upon hearing these words, the king bowed to the monk in front of the whole court. That's how the story goes. So, let me return to my initial question. Who just watched this video? Who is listening to my voice right now? If you examine your experience carefully, right here and now, can you point to what you call I? Who are you? If you want to find out more about how the Buddha answered this question, check out my video No Self-Teaching. And remember, what you seek is seeking you.
Seeking you. I don't know that that's correct.
If there is no self, what is reborn? The short answer is, your mind is reborn during death, the same way it was reborn every moment of your life. For a detailed answer, watch the rest of this video. Alright, if there is no self, what is reborn? If there is no soul, what is reborn? This is a very good and very common question that people ask when they're starting to learn about Buddhism. To fully answer it, we need to unpack what Buddhists mean when they use the word self. Many world religions have a concept that, in the English language, is encapsulated with the word soul. What exactly is meant by the word soul can vary between religions. Nonetheless, the idea of a soul is an almost universal concept among world religions. In the religions of India, they use the word Atman. And then Buddhism comes along with this whole a soul cannot be found stuff, and suddenly things get really confusing. Now, I want you to notice that I said a soul cannot be found and not there is no soul. That subtle difference is important because there are texts in which the Buddha doesn't give a definitive yes or no as to whether a soul exists. For example, the Ananda Sutta. Still, this doesn't mean that the Buddha was agnostic about the existence of a soul, like after all his years of meditation and teaching he had absolutely no opinion. No, it's not like that. So what do we mean when we say a soul cannot be found? In Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw's commentary on the Anatta-lakkhana Sutta, the discourse on the not-self characteristic, he divides erroneous views of self into 4 types. If you want to do a deep dive into the Buddhist teachings on selflessness, I recommend you read that commentary. But for the sake of simplicity in this video, I'm going to define the soul like this. The soul is the unchanging part of you that feels your feelings and does your actions. This is the SparkNotes version of what Buddhists intend to communicate when they use words like soul, self, and selflessness. And in this context, soul and self are interchangeable words. This is the concept of Atman that exists in many Indian religions. The soul is something that never changes. The soul feels your feelings. If you get a paper cut, your soul feels the pain. The soul controls your actions. Why did you choose vanilla instead of chocolate? Your soul made that choice sitting in its captain's chair somewhere inside of your mind-body mechanism. That's the idea, anyways, the Atman idea. It's an idea that Buddhism rejects. Now that we have a firm understanding of what the self is supposed to be, can we find it? Where are you supposed to look, anyway? For starters, let's think about the word I. When we use the words I, me, and mine, they can have a few different meanings, and most people aren't aware of how vague these meanings can get. Sometimes they mean our body. For example, if a person awkwardly stares at me for way too long, I say, "Why is that person looking at me like that?" In that case, me is the body. Other times the words I, me, and mine refer to the mind. For example, if I say, "I was shocked," what I mean is that the emotion, known as shock, appeared to my consciousness, and I was that consciousness. But wait, in that last sentence I said, my consciousness, as if I was owning the consciousness. If I'm the owner, what exactly is that owner? This is the vagueness I was talking about. So, how do Buddhists deal with this? In Buddhism, all the different things that make up I, me, and mine are called the 5 aggregates, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to change it from the 5 aggregates to the 3 divisions. Division 1, the body. Division 2, the thoughts and feelings. Division 3, the awareness. The first 2 parts are pretty easy to understand, I think, but the third needs a bit of explanation. Basically, awareness is the act of seeing, and it's very close to the thoughts, but not exactly the same. Here's an analogy. A coin always has 2 sides. In order for a thought to exist, there needs to be a mind which has the innate ability to see thoughts, to perceive thoughts, to be aware of thoughts. That's your awareness, the act of seeing. At the same time, in order for the act of seeing to happen, there needs to be a thought that is seen. The act can't exist by itself, there needs to be a thought or some other type of perception present in order for the act of seeing to happen. So, thoughts and awareness depend on each other for existence. They're both parts of the larger entity called the 3 divisions, in the same way that the heads and tails sides of a coin are both parts of the whole coin. They are part of the whole coin, but they aren't the same thing. Heads is not tails, and tails is not heads. This is how Buddhist philosophy explains what awareness is, after you simplify it for a video. In part 1, we defined the self as the unchanging part of you that feels your feelings and does your actions. Alright, so can we find anything like that within the 3 divisions? Every part of your body changes as you age, so the body definitely isn't a soul. Thoughts and feelings constantly appear and disappear. Even our memories, the most long-lasting thoughts we have, change and disappear. So thoughts and feelings aren't a soul either. What about awareness? In the Buddhist view of things, your awareness is kind of like a blank movie screen, and your thoughts are like images projected onto the screen. Whenever a thought appears, the screen changes from being dark and empty to being illuminated by multicolored lights. In this way, every time a thought arises, fades, and changes, your awareness is being changed at the same time. If that movie screen analogy didn't make sense, let's go back to the coin. Imagine you have a coin and you flip it in the air. As long as the coin is in motion, both sides are moving. The position of both sides is constantly changing. I know this is confusing, so if this still doesn't make sense to you, let's talk about time. Basically, Buddhists believe that every moment of time has a different moment of awareness. Right now, your awareness is seeing and hearing this YouTube video. 1 hour in the future, your awareness will be seeing something else, maybe a funny cat video. The experiences of watching a Buddhist video and a funny cat video are different. Right now, you are experiencing what Buddhists would call Buddhist video awareness, and in the future, you'll experience what they would call cat video awareness. Awareness is the act of seeing, hearing, and experiencing. Buddhist videos and cat videos offer slightly different experiences, and therefore, those are two different types of awareness. So, awareness is constantly changing too. It changes from Buddhist videos to cat videos to eating dinner to brushing your teeth to dreaming to waking up, so on and so on. And that's it. There's nothing left to analyze. We looked at every part of ourselves, all three divisions, and couldn't find anything which matched the definition of soul, the unchanging part of you. We tried to find a self and failed. This is the part of the video where I seemingly contradict everything I just said. This may sound surprising, but Buddhism actually teaches that we do have a self. We have a self, but not an Atman. In part 1, we briefly touched upon this word Atman, which is for the most part interchangeable with the word soul in Western religions. The soul, or Atman, is something that never changes. Buddhism rejects this idea because, from the Buddhist perspective, everything in the three divisions is constantly changing. And those three divisions comprise everything that could reasonably be called I, me, and mine. Buddhism teaches that we have a self which is constantly changing, a self which is made of several parts which work together in unison. It's not that we can't find self. The three divisions are yourself. They are everything that makes you you, but they aren't unchanging and immutable. They constantly change as they interact with each other and the outside world. And that's why Buddhists say they can't find an Atman, which is the idea that something exists which can be called a self and is eternally unchanging. This would be less confusing if we never used the word self and just always said Atman, but the language is already solidified this way, so we just have to deal with it. Anyways, what exactly is rebirth? What do Buddhists mean when they say rebirth? Quite simply, rebirth is change. Your three divisions change every single nanosecond. They change into things which are not entirely different or entirely the same compared to what they used to be. Your body changed from a baby's body to what you have now, not entirely the same or entirely different. Everything is constantly changing like that, which means everything is constantly being reborn. This change has been happening for as long as you've been alive, and in the Buddhist view, it doesn't stop when you die. Death is just a more dramatic type of change. Rebirth isn't really about death, it's about change. It's a process of change in which you lose a lot of your memories and your body and get new ones. When people are new to Buddhism, there's often confusion about whether ideas like rebirth should be interpreted in a literal way or a metaphorical way. The answer is literal. Every school of Buddhism believes in literal rebirth. Literal rebirth meaning you die and come back to life as another sentient being, sometimes a human, sometimes an animal, maybe even an alien. Yes, there are sutras which talk about aliens practicing Buddhism. There are a lot of things I could say about the reasons why this confusion exists, why sometimes even serious teachers of Buddhism seem to enable this confusion, but that will have to go into another video. In the meanwhile, if you want to learn about how literal rebirth has always been in Buddhism, I recommend the book Rebirth in Early Buddhism and Current Research by Bhikkhu Analayo. I will leave an affiliate link in the description box. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this video interesting, please click the like button and subscribe. May all sentient beings, infinite as space, in every possible universe benefit from this video. May they be free of suffering forever and ever, especially the ones who have hurt me.